The fact that Prince William has just signed an emergency order that will shut off monies connected to Queen Camilla's family is not the reason why Buckingham Palace is in a state of terror. It is the final page that contains the actual surprise. Only one name. The only relative. According to reports, Camilla battled to keep the figure out of the royal record since it was so significant. All the same, William signed. Not only did that signature prevent payments from being made in the future, but it also locked every transaction that was contested, canceled a transfer that was scheduled to take place the following morning, denied access to the account, and instructed investigators to track down where the money had gone. The document was already open in front of William by the time Camilla recognized that he would not let the situation continue. The question is, how did the Prince of Wales get to the point where he would confront the Queen, contradict his father, and cut off those who were tied to the Queen that Charles had spent years protecting? In the beginning, there were 3 payments that appeared to be harmless on their own, but when taken together, they pointed towards something that the palace could no longer account for. You should click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video right away if you are relieved that Prince William has finally drawn the line and prevented Camilla's family from treating royal monies as if they were private money. Anyone who agrees with what William has done but chooses to remain silent is allowing him to fight this palace struggle on his own, while those who wanted these payments to remain covert continue to believe that nobody cares. In the late afternoon of that day, the signing took place inside a specially designated room at Buckingham Palace. The emergency order that had the palace crest was in front of William as he sat in front of 2 files, a financial review and the information. She was standing behind him, Princess Anne. Catherine remained in the vicinity. Charles was present, but he was no longer in charge of making the ultimate choice. The request for further time had been made by Camilla. He had already provided her with a number of weeks. She had also requested that the largest beneficiary be identified solely by a code throughout the entire process. The request brought about a complete change. It is possible to conceal a code. There is the possibility of auditing, questioning, and remembering a real name. William did not agree. The order put a hold on any payments that were contested and related to Camilla's relatives. In the future, written clearance was necessary for transfers. There would be an examination of previous deals. A claim for reimbursement could be made against any payment that does not have a distinct royal purpose. First, there was the concluding clause. All of the individuals, businesses, and households that benefited from the program would be identified and documented in the official repository. It was impossible to delete any files. Changes to the descriptions were not permitted. It was not possible to transfer a transaction to another account and modify its name in a covert manner. This was the sentence that Camilla apparently dreaded the most, since she believed that private explanations would no longer be sufficient to defend what had already taken place. Although William took the pen in his hand, Charles made one last attempt to persuade him to sign the document. He inquired as to whether the situation may continue to be a debate inside the family, rather than taking the form of an official probe. William responded with a level head. Loyalty to one's family could not take the place of authorization, and silence could not take the place of communication. Please let me know if you agree or disagree with William's decision to cut off Camilla's family's financial support. Leave a remark with a yes or no answer, and don't leave the comment section without responding. In the event that William was justified in his decision to confront Camilla, then silently backing him is not sufficient. Nothing was mentioned by Anne. She did not have to do it. Repeated descriptions, missing signatures, divided payments, dates that did not match official engagements, and one permission code that appeared to originate from William's office, even though nobody there had granted it, were all included in the file that she was holding beneath her hand. His pen made contact with the page. After the first blow, the dispute was dismissed. The access to the money was terminated by the second. After William had finished signing the document, A payment that was supposed to be made the following morning was halted before it could be transferred out of the account. Even though there was no subsequent statement, everyone in the room was aware that the power dynamic had shifted at that moment. The palace accountant who was examining regular expense entries had noted the same internal reference related to 3 different payments 6 weeks earlier by the time the accountant was evaluating the entries. Hospitality was named as one of the jobs. A travel coordination was identified as one of them. Support for family liaison was provided by the 3rd individual. Although the dates and intentions are different, the code remains the same. During her investigation into the origin of that code's entry into the system, she discovered that the trail did not lead to William's residence. It went to an administrative channel that was connected to the office of the Queen, and buried behind those entries was another piece of information concerning the situation. There was a single recipient who appeared multiple times, each time hiding behind a different description, and they consistently received more than anyone else in the file that was examined. However, the accountant did not get in touch with William right away, due to the fact that the inference was too serious to carry upstairs without proof. She checked the entries once again. In accordance with the hospitality support, the payment had been authorized. The second looked to be the coordination of travel events. The third was buried beneath the costs associated with family liaison. On paper, each appeared to be predictable. The order in which they appeared was deliberate. It was the 18-month ledger that she opened. There were additional entries. Some of them were so stealthy that they went unnoticed. Others had been distributed between 2 different accounts. The charge for the automobile is here, and the lodging is there. In the category of official hosting, a private event fee was entered. Not that dramatic on its own. That was the game changer. There was a pattern that was dependent on no one viewing the whole picture at the same time. She had discovered 11 transactions that had the same reference family by the time lunchtime rolled around. 7 did not have a designated officer who gave approval, despite the fact that there was no royal engagement that matched the dates on the calendar. 4 were attributed to dates after being filed twice, retracted once, and then processed once more under a new description. 1 expense had been submitted twice. It was at that point that she stopped considering it to be an error. A meeting with William's comptroller was requested after she printed each and every page, arranged the documents in a plain folder, and then printed them out. Before the evidence was secured, there was no assistance, no email chain, and no digital summary that could be forwarded during this time. During the entire conversation, the comptroller remained silent. After that, he posed the question that she had been trying to avoid. Where did the money come from? Not a single individual was chosen as the answer. Not at this time. The payments were made through several intermediaries, including service providers, home contacts, and an event arrangement that was used multiple times under different identities. Due to the fact that the descriptions came to an end before the money trail did, it was difficult to identify the beneficiaries. During the evening, William was informed. An angry response did not come from him. His initial conjecture was that there was administrative uncertainty. Households belonging to royal families frequently utilized overlapping teams, shared locations, and private suppliers. When taken away from its accompanying documents, an expense that was submitted incorrectly may appear suspect. He issued an order for a comparison to be made in private against official diaries, staff, rosters, event invoices, and transportation data. The similarity made the situation much more difficult. Several dates did not have any official obligations associated with them. There was a particular transportation fee that was connected to a gathering that had already been paid for by another household. The named visitor was not required to attend a royal function on the evenings that were covered by 2 separate accommodation entries. A contract, a work summary, or a completion report were not included in a payment for consulting services. On William's request, the original approval forms were provided. There was no sign of them. It is not misplaced. It is absent. Despite the fact that his office continued to be visible in the digital history, None of his senior staff members were aware of the requests. Despite the fact that the clearance code was genuine, the regular signature trail just below it was devoid of any signatures. Despite the fact that the correct code had been input, the step that would have made it valid had not been followed. After that, Mr. William requested that Princess Anne look over the folder. I made a conscious decision to do so. For decades, Anne had been responsible for carrying one of the most demanding royal schedules, while also protecting budgets, with a reputation that caused staff members to double verify every statistic. She was not interested in engaging in theatrical outrage. Dates, signatures, and accepting responsibility were all important to her. She remained silent while she studied the file. Following that, she posed 3 inquiries. To whom did the funds be requested? They were approved by who profited from this? The initial response was presented differently in each of the documents. Upon further investigation, the second led to an authorization code that no one in William's office confirmed to using. A small list of recurrent names, companies, and private connections that are connected to Camilla's familial circle was prepared by the third. This time, Anne went back to the very first page. She brought to the attention of the finance staff something that they had almost missed. A number of payments had been maintained at a level that was somewhat lower than the threshold that prompted a senior review. Various months in total. The descriptions are different. A similar cautious distance below the threshold is required. The defense of coincidence had grown increasingly difficult. The issue of money was not the only thing that concerned William. His administration had requested that philanthropic organizations postpone spending, cut back on trips, and provide justification for any additional expenses. While these private arrangements continued to clear the system with minimal scrutiny, it was instructed that work that was visible to the public be put on hold. His mind continued to dwell on that inconsistency. It was impossible for the monarchy to expect discipline from charitable organizations, employees, and taxpayers, while at the same time permitting family connections to pass through a more relaxed door. Whenever there was a payment that was not revealed, the notion that royal funds supported public duty was weakened. As time went on, each missing signature turned into a question that William would eventually inherit. Anne cautioned him away from confronting anyone at this time. Initially, they need the key to the entrance. Under the most limited authority that could possibly be exercised, a technical review was ordered. Login records, administrative rights, and the amount of time that each code was utilized were all under the scrutiny of the finance team. After office hours, the majority of the entries had been produced. The terminal that was utilized for household coordination was the source of 2 of them. A second one had been filed remotely, and revisions had been made the following morning. The route was reliable throughout. William's workplace was not the place where it all started. It went through an administrative channel that was related to the Queen's household, and a staff credential was found, next to more than half of the entries that were contested. The credential, on the other hand, belonged to a person who denied having entered any of the areas. After that, there were only 2 options left. It was either that the account had been used without permission, or that someone within the palace was willing to let another individual take responsibility for the incident. The review had progressed beyond accounting by the time the following morning rolled around. The issue had evolved into a question of intent. It was brought to the attention of Camilla's office that a number of expenditures associated with numerous members of her family circle were being investigated. The response was received. Her assistant stated that there had been no inappropriate behavior. When it came to gatherings where professional and personal responsibilities frequently intersected, the funds covered things like hospitality, transportation, introductions, and private support to those attending. As far as they were concerned, the situation had been exaggerated by individuals who were not familiar with the operation of royal houses. Camilla adopted the same stance as Charles aforementioned. It was her contention that members of her family had assisted with the selection of guests, venues, timetables, and charitable contacts. Others had planned travel or assisted with the private parties that involved public personalities, while others had supplied rooms to those who needed them. Her statement was that these were not hidden presents. It was a matter of practical expenses that were addressed in the typical manner. However, the papers did not appear in the typical manner. The requests had not been granted for approval by William's office. There were no contracts in place for the work that was referred to as advising. Several of the invoices contained language that was so general that it could literally describe anything. Additionally, the answer appeared to change every time the finance team inquired about who had placed an order for a service. Charles wished for the review to be comprehensive. In the event that the narrative were to leave the palace, he was aware of what would occur. Technical codes and internal thresholds are not something that the general public would discuss. They would only acknowledge a single claim. Camilla's relatives have benefited from money that was supposed to be used for royal duties. Regardless of whether or not the explanation was innocent, the damage would still occur before the facts were revealed. Charles then suggested that a private rectification be made. All amounts that are not clear could be repaid. Alterations could be made to the descriptions. There is the possibility of issuing new regulations without making any accusations or initiating an ongoing investigation. William would not be in agreement. A bill might be settled through repayment. His authorization code had been used without a signature, and it was unable to provide an explanation for this. It did not provide an explanation for why expenses that were not connected carried the same phrasing. Furthermore, it was unable to provide an explanation for why a single recipient appeared multiple times behind different descriptions. Right at that moment, the tone of the conversation became more acerbic. Camilla stated that William was using a family situation as a test of commitment to justify his actions. It was William's response that there was no problem with loyalty. The matter at hand was control. An individual had gained access to a system that was connected to his office and made it appear as though he had given his approval to payments that he had never looked at. After William had returned from the conference, Catherine was informed about the status of the review. Camilla was not the subject of her initial inquiry. She inquired about the accounts that had been utilized. The response made her feel uneasy. A portion of the funds had been taken from budgets that were under pressure. Recently, it was communicated to teams that were associated with public projects that they should reduce their travel delay initiatives and justify any additional spending line by line. Despite this, costs associated with families had been able to travel through the same structure with less opposition. Catherine was quickly able to recognize the inconsistency. The individuals who were working on public causes were instructed to wait. There were no private arrangements made. She inquired about one thing with William. If the palace failed to demand transparency from itself, then how could it possibly put pressure on everyone else to do the same? It was that sentence that lingered with him. Press the like button to subscribe to the channel and share this video right now to see if William was correct to continue digging when others wanted the matter to be buried. Even if you quietly support him, nothing will change. This support should be made visible before the palace determines that the public has already moved on. Anyone who is glad to see Camilla's family funds questioned should make this contribution. After the afternoon had passed, Charles made yet another effort to slow down the event. He requested a day and a half. In order to give Camilla's home some time to submit documents that were missing, he stated that the review would not be terminated. Anne voiced her disagreement. There is no way that records that were made when the expenses were requested could be considered in the same manner as missing documents that arose only after questions were directed towards them. It was important to use the original forms. Dates were important. Writing by hand was important. Also changed was the sequence in which each document was uploaded into the system. William was in agreement. Following his instructions, the finance team was tasked with retrieving the first version of each request from the archive. There will be no summaries. There are no copies that have been corrected. There will be no excuses later. He desired the pages to be how they had been when they had been delivered. The investigation continued well into the evening. A clerk discovered 2 requests that were filed away under a category that was more generic to households than the account that had paid for them. The cover sheet of another had been scanned without being included. A fourth individual brought a message that made reference to verbal agreement, but offered no name. Following that, a single initial form emerged. The reoccurring recipient that the team had been attempting to identify was the subject of this information. On that particular page, the amount was relatively low. However, it was directly linked to a number of subsequent payments. Someone had written a brief message by hand and placed it in the lower area of the page next to the instructions for processing instructions. The language did not have a pecuniary tone. It served as a safeguard. Please ensure that the identity of the beneficiary is not included in the regular household ledger. The signature did not follow. Under that, there was no explanation that appeared. And for the very first time, William was able to observe that the payments had not just been overlooked by the person responsible for them. There was an individual who had made a conscious effort to conceal a name from view. The inquiry was altered as a result of the scribbled direction. However, up to that point, William was still able to assume that the payments were the result of negligence, a hazy understanding of obligations, and a culture within the palace in which personal demands occasionally infiltrated official systems without sufficient examination. This assurance was taken away by the note. Someone had realized that the recipient's name was a source of difficulty, and that person had made the decision to maintain its confidentiality. A request was made by Anne to have the original page sealed. William received a copy of the document. In the first instance, the scan history and account route were attached to a secure file that was also contained within the file. Each and every person who worked with it signed a record. No more folders that are loose. There are no more private corrections. Beginning with the payments, the financial team began to recreate them. They did not begin with some sort of name. Movement was the first step they took. One would be able to submit a request under a general description. The total sum would be distributed among a number of different groups. One of the components might be categorized as hospitality. Another might be labeled as transportation. And a third might be categorized as assistance for events. After that, the payments were routed through a provider, a household contact, or a private agreement, before the ultimate benefit was distributed to an individual who was related to Camilla's family circle. The path appeared to be so complicated that it was almost accidental. Additionally, it was consistent enough to give the impression that it was planned. An event that was never scheduled to take place on the official calendar was charged a venue fee as a result of a single transaction. Another accommodation that is covered for guests who are not on the list of attendees for the event. The third party paid for the use of the vehicle on a weekend when the royal household did not have any engagement scheduled in the vicinity. The group then discovered the language that was repeated. Despite the fact that they were issued several months apart, 3 invoices described the same services using the exact same words, the exact same sentence, the exact same punctuation, and even the exact same unusual spelling mistake. That particular aspect was significant. In most cases, independent suppliers will not describe work that is unrelated with identical errors unless they are copying from a shared instruction. There were multiple firm names on the invoices, but the phrasing indicated that they came from the same source. William inquired about the bank account that was responsible for each payment. There were 2 that went to different service accounts. It went through a company that specializes in events. An additional individual relocated into a hospitality arrangement that is utilized for private events. At first glance, there did not appear to be a single benefit. There was something below the surface. The accounts paid invoices that continually supported the same individual, the same properties, and the same network of private activities. These bills were paid without consideration. The name was mentioned in a roundabout way, much too frequently to be ignored. Charles received a meeting invitation from William. The dossier was positioned in the middle of them. There was no assistant sitting close. Following William's presentation of the note, the duplicated invoice language and the account map to Charles Anne joined the conference. In complete silence, Charles read. He did not raise any objections to the numbers. He expressed doubts about the interpretation. In spite of the fact that the paperwork was inadequate, he maintained that a private arrangement may nevertheless serve a sovereign purpose. There were many instances in which family members assisted with guests, charitable organizations, introductions, and events without official contracts. Having records that were missing did not necessarily result in the support being improper. In one respect, William was in agreement. It was not enough that the paperwork was poor. However, the bad paperwork was not the only factor. In the records, there were approvals that were absent descriptions that were repeated, sums that were divided, entries that were diverted, and a written command to conceal the receiver from the normal ledger. When taken as a whole, the pattern was considerably more difficult to interpret as informality. Following that, Camilla entered using her own personal account. During times when palace teams need flexibility, she stated that the benefactor had provided actual assistance and had entered the picture. In the absence of these payments, work that would have been performed by independent contractors would have been more expensive. This is the contracts that William requested. There was not a single one. A request for finished job reports was made by him. There was not a single one. His office was designated as the approving authority, and he inquired as to why this was the case. No clear answer came. The atmosphere became more tense. The topic of personalities was removed from the conversation by Anne. In a warning to Charles, she informed him that the problem had spread beyond Camilla's family. It is possible that any working royal could be accused of treating official funds as private allowances if the palace were to accept illegal services. From relatives, utilize approval codes that were obtained from other sources and conceal names from normal records. There was a calculation made by the finance team to determine the proportion of the money that was reviewed that went to the recurring beneficiary. A higher number than Charles had anticipated was presented, a greater size than William had initially been informed. Because it was large enough, the idea of occasional support from family no longer seemed plausible. On the other hand, Charles inquired as to whether the review could proceed without preventing access. Anne said no. It was possible for additional funds to transfer before the investigation was completed, so long as the payment method remained available. It is possible to reclassify the evidence. Currently, outstanding invoices might be approved. While the palace was conducting an investigation the day before, it would be causing new problems the day after. The evening before, William's legal counsel was consulted about the matter. Their viewpoint was straightforward. The implicated accounts fell within powers he could suspend, while a formal review took conducted. He did not require Camilla's approval in any way. An announcement to the public was not required of him. Regarding the specific matter of safeguarding finances associated with his office, he did not demand that Charles sign besides him or any other person. Due to that conclusion, the equilibrium was altered. As a result of the legal opinion, delay was no longer a shield. Prior to the morning, William placed an order for the preparation of an urgent document. The initial draft prevented access to subsequent drafts. Each and every record was preserved by the second. The clause that nobody anticipated was included in the third. In the event that earlier payments could not be determined to be connected to a legitimate royal purpose, the palace would not simply close the file. It was going to try to get the money back. William did not sign the emergency order right away, despite the fact that it was ready before daylight. It was not enough for him to have just one attorney check each line. By the time the clock struck 3, every clause had to be able to withstand the pressure from the palace, the challenge from the Queen's household, and the issue that was farther on. How come he had acted in such a hurry? Within the final schedule of payments was where the answer could be found. Around noon, Buckingham Palace had become completely silent. The employees strolled through the hallways with their folders held close to their chests. Doors were shut earlier than usual, and talks came to a halt whenever they heard footfall that were foreign to them. A sufficient number of individuals were aware that William had summoned Anne to return to the palace, and Catherine had arrived without any public engagements on her agenda. the preparations for the signing chamber were done in privacy. A document that was white in color and bore the heading Buckingham Palace was presented to William. Alongside it was the financial dossier, the message that had been penned, and a list of every individual and business that was connected to the accounts that were being contested. Camilla was surprised to find that the list was longer than she had anticipated. One effort was made by her before William entered the room. In order to allow for a family gathering to take place, Camilla requested that Charles postpone the order. It was a straightforward argument. Upon the signing of the agreement, the matter would no longer be considered to be the family's responsibility. There would be a place for it in the album. Charles conveyed that request to William in his entirety. At least one concession was made by William. It was possible for the freeze to be kept confidential while the evaluation was ongoing. To the public, there would be no accusation made. The investigation would not include the identification of any relatives. However, it was imperative that the identities of each and every beneficiary be kept within the official file. It was a distinction that Camilla did not accept. Her argument was that a secret code would prevent innocent people from being judged before the facts were established. William had a different perspective on the matter. It was possible to change a code. Relocating a code is possible. A code could vanish while it is included within another ledger. Real names engendered a sense of duty. At that point, neither side would venture to cross the line. Anne was already present in the room on the time that William entered in. Catherine maintained a calm but vigilant stance as she stood near the far end of the table. Opposite the chair that had been allocated for him, Charles sat down. Camilla continued to stand next to him, while holding a statement that had been drafted by her office. William had not made a request for it. The legal advisor did a verbal reading of the order. In the first place, each and every payment method that is connected to the contested arrangements would be instantly frozen. Second, any and all future transfers that are associated with the previously mentioned relatives' businesses and household contacts would be subject to a new and written approval. Third, each and every transaction that occurred in the past would be examined in comparison to official duties, contracts, invoices, event records, and evidence of work that had been finished. In the fourth place, during the time that the investigation was still ongoing, no document could be classed, renamed, relocated, or destroyed. In the fifth place, any sum that couldn't be linked to a valid royal purpose could be referred for recovery through the process. This was the last provision that was made. Camilla interrupted just as the identity of the most significant recipient was being revealed. She stated that the individual had provided years of private assistance, assisted with hospitality, introduced philanthropic contacts, and supported events where official and personal commitments had intersected. She also had provided assistance with hospitality. In the event that the name was recorded as if it were part of an investigation, she cautioned that it would generate suspicion that may potentially never be undone. A single inquiry was posed by William. What was the reason for the name being excluded from the usual ledger entries? The silence in the room was silenced. According to reports, the dossier revealed that the majority of the contested benefit had been distributed through a private hospitality and events agreement that was affiliated with one of Camilla's adult relatives. It was not the records that demonstrated that the relative had personally recorded bogus approvals. Rather, they demonstrated something different. The same family-linked arrangement continued to benefit from repeated expenses, which were handled through changing descriptions without William's express authorization. There was more than one payment. There was a pattern to it. Charles inquired as to whether or not the name may be removed prior to the conclusion of the review. William did not agree. It would be clear from the records that the individual had not committed any wrongdoing. Contracts and documentation might be used to support the integrity of the services if they were real. However, eliminating the identify prior to the beginning of the investigation would shield the arrangement rather than provide an opportunity to investigate it. The tone of Camilla's statement improved. Attached to the order was the original note that Anne had put. William clicked on the signing page of the document and opened it. Not a single person moved. Unlike the others, Catherine was only observing him. At the table, Charles cast his gaze downward. Camilla kept her gaze concentrated on the final schedule, which was now a permanent part of the palace record and contained the name that she desired to be safeguarded. William took the pen under his hand. The accounts were frozen after the initial stroke. All of the pending transfers were terminated by the second. The final movement brought into question all of the payments that had been made previously. He put the pen down there. At that moment, the order went into effect. Later on, nobody in that room could claim that they were ignorant. The instruction was received by a finance officer who was located outside of the room, and they quickly removed the approval credentials. The predetermined payments have been discontinued. Changes were made to the access permissions. All of the households were required to obtain copies of the transaction history before they could submit any revisions. After that, the officer came back with some unexpected information. The following morning, there was already one payment that was waiting to be released from the queue. Although it contained the same general description of hospitality that was found in earlier entries, the amount was not so low that it would be considered insignificant if it were to have been reviewed. It was greater than any single payment that had prompted the investigation to begin in the first place. And in contrast to the others, this one was the only one that had a destination account that the palace had never seen before. A payment that was supposed to be made the following morning was never transferred out of the account. Following the implementation of William's request, the transfer was halted. The destination was marked as suspicious, and the invoice was withdrawn from the payment queue. What had appeared to be a single final charge turned out to be the most obvious indication that the contentious agreement was still actively being carried out. A newly established private company that was connected to the same hospitality network that was being evaluated was the owner of the destination account. There was no record of its name in the ledger that was used earlier. Its address, on the other hand, was identical to a property that was mentioned multiple times in the supporting documentation. That connection was sufficient to keep the record intact and to halt all of the instructions that were associated to it. Before the day came to a close, Camilla's office filed a challenge against the freeze. It was argued by her advisors that the payment covered valid services that had already been delivered, and that withdrawing the payment could put the palace in a position where it would be subject to a contractual dispute. A request for the contract was made by William's team. There were none produced. After that, Charles made an effort to lessen the damages. Without conducting a more comprehensive investigation into the preceding years, he suggested that the funds be kept frozen until the family had reached a peaceful resolution to the situation. William did not accept. The precise trend that had compelled him to take action would be disregarded if the analysis was restricted to the most recent move. His encouragement came from Anne. He was adamant that each and every related payment had to be scrutinized according to the same set of guidelines. There will be no breaks for status, no more gentle language for the family members. There was no private agreement that could take the place of a request that was dated a person who was listed as the approver and evidence that the work had been finished. It was almost quickly after that position that the palace was partitioned. There were members of the team who believed that William had safeguarded the organization before the matter could become public. Others were concerned that he had sparked a disagreement that would follow the family into every further engagement in the future. Frustration was growing inside the household of the Queen as a result of the rapid freezing of the water. In William's office, the atmosphere was more chilly than outside. There was a person who had utilized his authority without his approval, and nobody knew how long this had been going on. There were strict new controls in place. Changes were made to the approval codes. Shared credentials have been removed from use. Expenses that were associated with the family were reviewed by senior management. Additionally, each corrected duplicate was required to be kept alongside the original invoices. Providing approval verbally was no longer sufficient. It was not possible to pay for a service that did not have a contract just because someone who was close to the palace stated that it had taken place. There was no longer any money. However, the questions had not. Charles was aware of the gravity of the situation. It is possible that his attempt to safeguard Camilla may be interpreted as an act of protection rather than loyalty. If the review reveals that public reports have frequently supported private family arrangements, but openly forsaking her would come with its own set of consequences. His son, who would be responsible for the consequences, was caught in the middle of the woman who was standing next to him. Camilla maintained her resolve. Her assertion was that her relatives had provided assistance to the royal household in ways that were not always able to be documented in official documents. The provision of hospitality introductions, private coordination, and support for families frequently took place outside of public timetables. Her interpretation was that William's order viewed any informal agreement as being suspicious. For William, this was precisely the reason why there were regulations. Catherine had a different perspective on the conflict. It was no longer a question of whether Camilla's relatives had ever been useful. Rather, the debate centered on whether or not usefulness granted anyone the authority to access royal finances without explicit permission. As soon as that line was eliminated, it became possible to justify any and all future expenditures until the money had been depleted. Anne emphasized the same issue in a more direct manner, because the individuals involved were members of the royal circle. The palace could not ask the public to accept masked names, borrowed codes, and missing contracts merely because they were involved. If the palace wanted the public to trust its reports, it could not ask them to do so. As the week came to a close, the emergency order transitioned from a temporary freeze to something more permanent. Within the vicinity of William's office, it established a new control system. Written consent was necessary for each and every payment that was associated with a member of the extended family. Every transaction that occurred in the past could be reopened. It is possible to request reimbursement for any benefit that cannot be explained. It brought about a change in the connection that existed between William and Camilla. It was expected that they would continue to make public appearances at the same festivities. They would remain on the same balconies, go to the same services, and smile in the same manner, all while maintaining a controlled expression. Privately, there was a decrease in trust. As a result of William's actions, it became clear that he would no longer tolerate family loyalty as an excuse to disregard missing data. The information that Camilla had acquired was of comparable significance. He was unable to be stopped by Charles. In the event that William was correct in drawing that line, then viewers should not continue to passively support him. As soon as possible, give this video a like, subscribe to it, and share it with others, because silence only supports those who assumed that these payments will never be questioned. Not only did the order safeguard the funds, but it also opened a more confidential file. During the final review, the investigators discovered a second permission code next to a payment that did not in any way assist Camilla's family. An additional royal household, an additional private arrangement, and a handwritten set of initials that Anne immediately recognized were all indicated by the message. Due to the fact that those initials belonged to a person whom nobody anticipated seeing anywhere near the account, this is where the following story begins.